Well, welcome everybody. My name is Tim Sandage. I'm a Senior Security Manager for our security partners within AWS Public Sector. And I'm here today to talk to you about compliance as code. And I know a really super exciting thing that everybody loves to hear about compliance and learn about compliance. But one of the things that we're constantly asked by our customers is, how can I get compliance with X? And so fill in the blanks, whether that's FedRAMP or PCI or CJIS or whatever the case may be. So about 2 years ago, we started this program called ATO on AWS. So what is ATO on AWS? Well, it really focuses on how do we help our partners get through regulated workloads. You know, the focus is not only to help you build a secure and capable workload in AWS, but then most of our customers, especially in public sector, are trying to adhere to various compliance regimes. You know, as I mentioned, FedRAMP is obviously one of the biggest ones. In order to be able to sell to the federal government in the US, you've got to have your cloud service FedRAMP compliant or FedRAMP accredited. And so our team is set up with tools, services, training, and so forth to help you do that. And so as we go into this, you know, it really is focused on, first and foremost, our customers. AWS, we're focused on how can we best help and position our customers to be successful in AWS, as well as our partners. As I mentioned before, most of our organizations that are going through things like FedRAMP and so forth are AWS partners and so forth. And so they need to be able to get through these rigid compliance domains. But we also need to be able to accelerate them, because the other paradigm shift in the security and compliance space is, how can we do it faster and how can we leverage things like infrastructure as code? So from our standpoint, we accelerate and automate things so that we can reduce that overhead, reduce that cost, and make sure that we're providing reusable artifacts. Because the other thing that we want to focus on is, we don't want to just get you secure and compliant for the day you go through audit. We want to get you secure and compliant so that as you work through your operational effectiveness and you go to market with your business, that you maintain that security and compliance long term. So some of the key items that we use, as you can see up here, is we really have integrated DevOps and SecOps with this idea, and you probably have heard of it or seen it from a few years ago. We created a program called Security by Design, and it's really that idea of, how do we build security into every single layer? How do we integrate the best of breed in DevOps and the best of breed in security, and then obviously leverage infrastructure as code? Because as we say in our team, if you've got to do it more than once, we were going to automate it. And so as we go through this, I'll tell you some of the different ways and features and programs that we actually have in place. So I kind of hit some of this. A lot of it, you know, our core tenets, the things that drive us as an organization, as our team, and then as our program, is automation. You know, we want to leverage infrastructure as code. First and foremost, having a codification of your architecture ensures that you're not going to make mistakes, ensures that it's meeting the intent of your security policy, ensures that it's meeting the intent of whatever compliance regime that you're trying to go through. Because ultimately, the goal of a lot of our partners and customers that are going through this program is to get certified. So we want to get you accelerated, automated, and certified as quickly and as costless or at a reduced cost as we can. And then ultimately, we want to be able to maintain that validation. As I mentioned before, nothing's worse than to get through audit, you know, high five your team and say, hey, we did it, and then go back to bad practices within your operation and then have a security breach or have an issue because, you know, some of your security treatments that you've put in place have been either mitigated, reduced, or changed, either through human error or through operational, you know, evolution. So that's really why we want to make sure that we validate and maintain that long term. And what does this really do? It empowers you as a business. I mean, think about it, you know, if you can project that secure and compliant all the time capability within your environment, it becomes an powerful force for you as a partner within AWS, because now you can ensure that you are doing the best of breed of what you can do to mitigate risk, and so that you can assure your customers that are consuming your service that you're doing and you're following the most leading practices within AWS. So I already talked about this a little bit, our AWS partner driven process. So again, going back to the AWS shared responsibility model, we as AWS aren't necessarily coming in and doing this work for you, because it really would, violate kind of that shared responsibility. But we are bringing in partners that can help you do this. And so we've vetted a myriad of partners within our program, both technology, consulting, and system integrator partners, as well as MSSPs or MSPs, because we've actually put them through training, and we've provided them with different tools and pre-built automations and CloudFormation templates and control implementation details so that they can do this faster, better, and quicker on your behalf. And so we have, for every use case, depending on if you're an organization that you have the capabilities in-house to do most of this work and you just need some high-level advisory consulting services, we have partners to do that. If you want somebody to come in and actually do this from a managed service provider standpoint, we have partners that can do that. Or if you just need recommendations on what is the technology that I need for antivirus or for security information and event management, like a Splunk or something like that, we have partners that are already pre-built and pre-baked solutions that meet the intent of these different regulatories. So that's really what the process, or what we really focus on. How do we enable our partners to then come and serve you, our customers, and our other partners going through regulated workloads? So really the goal is ultimately, as it says right here, we want to have verified compliance. We want to be able to have verified, capabilities within your AWS customer account, that you've followed the leading practices, that you've leveraged that automation, that infrastructure as code, or CloudFormation templates to really accelerate your path to production, but more importantly, maintain as you operate your organizational, business or whatever your focus is. And then we want to be able to really look at ways that we can improve your, compliance posture, because you'll see here is that there's a lot of amazing tools that have come out over the years within AWS, both currently, like, AWS Audit Manager that just came out. You might have heard about it this year at reInvent, the announcement a couple of days ago, to other tools that have been released over the years, like Config Rules and Security Hub and some of those. We make sure that we're looking for ways to improve your security compliance in an operational effectiveness. Because ultimately what that's going to do is it's going to reduce those non-compliant findings. I mean, that's ultimately the goal, is that we want you to be ready for audit at any point in time, whether it's an annual audit or it's your first audit to get through that regulated workload. We're looking for ways to reduce that overhead and the complexity it takes our partners and customers to get through this. So you have demonstratable audit capability as well as security and compliance, responsibility, so that you're no longer having to look at security and compliance as this overhead or as this afterthought when I go to push out my application. It's something that's integrated by a security by design capability within the service. So here's an example of some of the different pieces that we do with our partners and for our partners or customers. As you can see, we've got a multitude of compliance verticals that we focus on, and this is just a small sampling of what we're working on, because especially now in going into 2021, we're starting to get demand to focus on and support other geographies outside of the United States. So we've got partners that are going through IRAP, which is an Australian certification. We've got partners that are going through Protection B, which is a Canadian certification accreditation. And so we're building out more capabilities and setting up the opportunity to really help customers and partners expand their capabilities. And then down at the bottom, there's a couple of real world examples. A couple of years ago, when we first started the program, an organization called Smartsheet came to us and said, hey, we've been accepted into FedRAMP JAB, but the issue is that we've got 90 days to get through the process, and we haven't even opened up an AWS GovCloud account. And so we said, all right, we brought together the right partners, the right, focus, and we actually not only got them operational in AWS GovCloud, built out their, secure and compliant environment, against the intent control base of FedRAMP Moderate, and got them audited and submitted their paperwork to the FedRAMP Program office in 90 days. And so this was a pretty compelling, as well as one of the fastest to market or through this regulated space. When you consider average of FedRAMP, processes even today is 12 to 14 months. And so this was a real, highlight to our program and to our partners that actually executed on this. And another one we've got where we also did the same thing with another company called Innovest Systems. And so they were able to get through their entire FedRAMP focused process using a consulting partner within our program called Coalfire Systems. And so they were able to get through the process and get their complete FedRAMP package built in under 6 months. So, and we've got many more of those types of opportunities that we've been able to accomplish over the years. But these are just a couple of samplings of how we make sure that we highlight some of these successes and some of the program objective capabilities that we have in our system. So ultimately, what are the benefits? Again, I kind of talked about these, so I'll run through real quick, is really we're looking to reduce effort. As I mentioned before, going through a regulated from start to finish, certification, whether it's FedRAMP, PCI, or whatever, can be 12, 18 months. We've even seen some organizations take upwards of 36 months to get through building a compliant and certifiable capability in AWS. And so we really want to reduce that effort. We want to make sure that we not only reduce the time, the cost, the overhead, because let's face it, there's not enough staff out there to be able to do this stuff manually. So we've got to look for ways to reduce effort. We want to make sure that we're helping and build predefined end-to-end automation, because in a lot of cases, a lot of these control frameworks and a lot of these different security, controls, they're known to us in advance. And so we can actually script through infrastructure as code, or in our case, CloudFormation templates. We can actually look at the control implementation details and say, from a technology standpoint, we can actually go and codify that, and then also restrict that and make sure that we're building in guardrails as we build it so that it doesn't change over time. Another interesting thing, and we'll get into this in a few minutes, is really looking at traditional security administrative policies. We actually can codify security policies at this state. And so we can look at things that traditionally we wrote in a security policy and said, gosh, I really hope that person reads it, and I really hope that they follow along. In this case, we can actually enforce that, but we enforce it based on the organizational risk posture, because some organizations don't want to be super restrictive. Other organizations want to be incredibly restrictive. And so we can find that balance based on the business objective and make sure that we're reducing risk appropriately for each business. And then, as I said, we continue to add qualified partners and qualified integrators into our program to help us not only focus on existing security and compliance regulations, but then some of these emerging ones or ones that I mentioned that are in other geographies outside of the United States. So as we move on, I want to kind of get a little bit more technical and in the weeds of how do we really do this. And so most of you, and if I was live with you, I'd be asking how many people have heard of the risk management framework. It's a common, U.S. government NIST framework that really looks at a 6-phased approach for managing risk. Well, in the cloud, we've looked for ways to innovate and to optimize this idea. And so we've come up with this process. It's really 5 phases, but it's really starting at laying down a secure baseline of your infrastructure in phase 1, rather than in a traditional risk management process. You're looking at, how do I evaluate the boundaries? How do I evaluate my risk posture? How do I evaluate the controls that I need to implement? We already know in most cases, like a customer comes to us and says, I have to get through FedRAMP. So now we know, okay, it's FedRAMP. What level? They want to go through moderate. Now we know what the control base is automatically. We can script that and build to that. And that's what we're going to go through now, is a little bit more in detail of how we pre-build against these known entities. We can actually say, okay, FedRAMP moderate requires you to do this for access control. It requires you to do that for audit. It requires you to do that. Another thing for system communication or system integrity. So we know that the level of encryption, like an example is FIPS 140 validated, cryptography. We know going in that has to be implemented within this environment. So we can pre-script that and pre-identify products and services that meet the intent of that and document that as infrastructure as code. So it lays down, already in a compliant state baseline And then we can start looking at ways to now stitch in the application and make sure the different business applications and services that our partners are integrated into that can now inherit and then leverage those predefined security implementations. The other things we also do is make sure that we use services like AWS auto-scaling so that, as organizations build out these regulated spaces, in a lot of cases, they have to build out a complete organizational posture with their full intent of what the workload is going to look like. But over time, they may be able to reduce some of that. And so by making sure that we're leveraging services like auto-scaling, we can scale up and we can scale down, and it really helps the organization not only save money, but reduce resources and capabilities. So it's kind of making sure that security boundary that we built stays proportionate to the organizational risk appetite. And so that's kind of step one as we go through and provision this. So this is an example of what one of these automated architectures look like. And so, as I said, we kind of treat it as what's called a general support system. It's not the full, from cement on up to the application. It's really looking at from, the bare metal implementation of I need to lay down an operating system. I need to create VPCs. I need to create fault tolerance using dual availability zones. I need to implement certain security partner services, things like, in this case, it's calling out Trend Micro Deep Security, and it's talking about Saint from your vulnerability management, and GitHub for a code repository, and Puppet as a DevOps tool set. But what this does is it's laying out the basic architecture, and then it's also making sure that there's parity in a secondary availability zone. So this becomes your secure baseline of a general support system. So as this gets laid down by one of our partners, you're able to then start stitching in your application or your business objective on top of that. And so there's a lot of these pieces that are already built in. So the level of effort for bringing in that application into this secure environment becomes less daunting for our customers and partners. And so what that does is that then it transitions on directly into, kind of what has really been a difficult task over the years for security professionals is how do we maintain a secure configuration management? Because let's face it, IT or technology change and they evolve, and they need to be patched, they need to be updated, different services and systems that need to be integrated and so forth. And so the next phase is how do we automate that configuration management piece? And that's, again, why we talk about that integration of DevOps and security ops, where the DevSecOps, whichever variant that you want to call it, is how do we make sure that we're leveraging tools and services that support configuration management? So things like AWS Config that really actually identifies from a birth of a service within your AWS account through the iteration of that, every time it changes, every time it gets interconnected to another service, every time that it's refreshed or patched, config actually tracks all of that. So it gets that pedigree data of those types of services that are in your organizational account, and it maintains that that what your security posture is from a configuration standpoint. It also has an additional subservice called config rules, and you can set up whether they're embed rules that are already in your AWS account to say, hey, if I have a policy that says an EBS volume has to be launched encrypted to this standard, I can actually have a config rule that if somebody comes in and they launch an EBS volume that doesn't meet that standard, a config rule can actually do one of two things. It can isolate it, it can not allow it onto the network, or it can actually just disable it and completely take it out of your operation. And then it can also be paired up with a simple notification system and a service and other things to be able to say, hey, this happened in your environment. You already had an auto reaction to that, or we've isolated and now you can have a human reaction to it. So you have options depending on your risk posture as an organization. The other one is AWS Systems Manager. So again, same concept. You can actually use this for patch management and taking care of your EC2 instances and taking care of different systems and services within your environment so that you can maintain that configuration. And the other thing is that you can actually leverage these in diverse environments and make sure that you actually capitalize on being able to leverage that consistency across different environments and so forth. And then the last thing is really Amazon CloudWatch is really, one of the things that really becomes paramount is being able to know what's going on and getting alarms within your environment and being able to set different parameters, whether it's for CPU utilization or it's storage, whatever the case may be. You can actually create, again, automated notifications, automated reactions by using in concert a lot of these tools and services. And so then that goes, pushes us right into phase 3, which is really monitoring performance. So now we can actually start really gauging what is our security metrics, what is our compliance metrics, what's happening in our environment. Because one of the things that we recommend in the cloud is make sure that you're logging everything in the cloud, because everything can be logged, and make sure that you're then assimilating, because a lot of these regulations have the requirement of having a centralized security identity and event management, or a SIM tool, so you can collect all these different logs from CloudTrail or for CloudWatch or VPC flow logs, whatever the case may be, and you can really get a full picture of what's going on in your AWS services. But you can also integrate what are the logging that are happening in other partner solutions, whether it's your Trend Micro or it's the Saint vulnerability scans or it's your, Windows machines. You can actually consolidate those logs and you get this single view or this single pane of glass that really tells you where you're at from a security performance and monitoring capability. So it becomes really, really powerful for organizations to be able to leverage this type of approach. And so the result of that, and this is the part that I get excited about being a security and compliance person, is it all of a sudden this inverts the security and compliance paradigm from being a reactionary to being a proactive capability within your environment. Because now using this type of a security by design and leveraging the DevOps, SecOps integration of being able to make sure that you're leveraging this infrastructure as code, you're immediately, responding to configuration management changes, performance and monitoring, all of a sudden security and compliance becomes an output. We're able to just glean what is our security and compliance posture at any given moment. And we also have other tools and services that get integrated, like Security Hub, that not only integrates a lot of different security services within AWS, such as Guard Duty or Macy or Inspector, whatever the case may be. They also integrate a lot of our AWS, partner security services. And so we've got, again, another pane of glass to really be able to look at that true security, strategy that's going on within our environment. And so we can actually make informed decisions about not only what is our security posture, but what is our compliance adherence. As I said before, one of the real big goals of this program is making sure that, we focus on your security, because, just like at AWS, security is priority 0 for AWS. And so we want to impart that to our customers, because in order to be compliant or have a compliant result to pass an audit, it starts with a secure baseline, making sure that you have the proper tools, the proper systems, the proper integration of security services, working in concert, leveraging, again, a lot of these concepts that I've already presented, the DevOps and the SecOps integration and a security by design mindset, but then being able to see all of that performance and that metrics to be able to say, okay, my investment in security and compliance is paying off. It's working. It's doing what I need it to do. And going back to an earlier statement of it becomes empowering for your business. It becomes like, hey, we can now actually go out and leverage our security posture as a heightened benefit of our business, because now it can help the business grow versus being historically what a lot of organizations look at is that, security is a necessary evil or compliance is a necessary evil. What we want to do is we want to change that to be a business enabler and really illustrate that I am more secure and more capable, or at least I understand where I'm at from a security posture more clearly, so I can immediately reduce risk or treat risk accordingly. And so that's really where we get into this, where the powerful part of this phased approach. And then lastly, it really then comes into this, and this is where I always look at the promise of cloud has always been how can I optimize, whether it's resource optimization, cost optimization, security, fault tolerance, the promise of the cloud, for the last 12, 13 years or whatever it's been now since, cloud computing has been introduced is, the idea and the concepts is, it's going to reduce costs, it's going to improve innovation, it's going to do all these things. But what happens with a lot of our customers in the regulated space is that they get bogged down on trying to identify, well, how do I configure EC2 to meet the intent of this control, or how do I use S3, or can I use S3 in my PCI architecture or in my FedRAMP architecture? And so that's really what our focus of our program is, and the focus of how we've enabled our partners to be enabled of our customers and partners to say, let's take the fear and anxiety out of, okay, these are the services that can be used in scope for these different regulations and different compliance objectives. These are the integrations and the pre-defined infrastructure as code capability of these services. And now it takes a lot of that, guesswork away for our customers so that they can get through these regulated pieces. And now they can start focusing on this very, important promise of resource optimization of, now I can actually optimize my costs and say, okay, should I, use different services, or should I, look at enterprise discount programs and other cost optimization capabilities? Can I actually look for performance, advantages? Again, I talked about making sure that we're leveraging AWS auto scaling, because it's really going to help us perform, from a, if I need to scale up, I can scale up when I've got demand. If I don't need all that demand, I can scale back down. And again, that goes back to that cost optimization. And then ultimately, as you can see here, using tools and services that are built into your AWS account, like Trusted Advisor, it can also advise on additional security options or a different fault tolerance. As I said, we really focus on making sure that you have a fault tolerant design, because again, most of these regulatory environments require fault tolerance or require some kind of disaster recovery. But there's still going to be other optimized areas that maybe you can look at from, a business perspective, because every business is going to have a different risk appetite. And so that's why these tools and services are there to make sure that, we're helping you through our partners build a secure and compliant and auditable capability within AWS. But as you operate, you may find that your risk appetite is increased, or maybe there's a business objective that you're willing to take a little bit more risk. So you need to optimize, but still figure out, can I still maintain my compliance and my regulatory adherence? But can I maybe take on a little additional risk in certain areas to make sure that I'm operating my business effectively? So these are all the tools and services that we offer within AWS, as well as through some of our partners, to make sure that, not only are you getting secure and compliant, you're operating a secure and compliant state, and then you can really start optimizing what makes sense to me as a business. Because as I said, the most important part out of what we're focused on is kind of shifting that paradigm shift is let's make security and compliance and enabling your business. Let's make sure that we're doing the right things to reduce risk in your organization. But let's make sure that we're also enabling the business to innovate and to advance its capability on AWS. Because face it, that's what you're operating, these IT assets for, is to innovate your business or innovate on behalf of your customers. And so that's the focus of our program as well. So with that, kind of, to the end of really what the goals are is to really, how do we make sure that we impart, a security, by design mindset with our customers, really relay that same objective that we operate on, as security being, priority zero with AWS, and then illustrating on how having those focuses and leveraging the various tools and the different capabilities within the cloud, really, again, infrastructure as code, cloud formation templates, those kind of things, making sure that we're automating everything that we can because it's really going to help advance that capability and then help business customers as well as partners achieve those different security and compliance objectives. So with that, I want to flip to one more slide and thank you, and then also remind everybody, please complete your session survey. It's really important to get that feedback from that we're doing, we're hitting the mark on what you're looking for. If there's areas of improvement that you want us to be able to, do for you in the future, please let us know. So with that, I appreciate it and thank you.